Entschuldigung, Google Hopf, deine Handschuhen. Thank you for auditing the Always Positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who is not afraid to review German music, despite the fact I can't speak German. Ich spreche keine Deutsch. I'm going to be reviewing Haben, oder Sein, to have or to be, by the German rapper Amewu. And partly I'm inspired. Last week I spoke at a conference and I participated in a conference on European hip-hop. And it's a very real thing. It's a very vibrant thing. But in general, I've stuck to French hip-hop or Belgian hip-hop or anything that's in French because I speak French. But I want to try to force myself to live by my own creed, which is fighting linguistic colonialism, fighting English language hegemony. So I need to put myself in a position where I'm asking you to be. When I ask you to listen to French hip-hop, I don't expect you to be able to speak French. I expect you to be okay living in this space where you don't understand everything. Because for most people in the world, when they listen to popular music, they're quite often listening to music in English, which is a language they may not understand any better than I understand German. Staubstauger. So what interests me about this was actually a suggestion by one of my Patreons, Dreadly77. Thank you. Every once in a while he sends me some information. If you're on my Patreon, it's easier for me to sort of communicate with you than it is through the comments here or through Instagram. So I was able to check it out. I was able to check out this rap album. And if you're paying attention, you'll know this is the second time I've reviewed a German rap album. It was around this time last year. I reviewed Driss and his Bug tape, and I liked it quite a bit. And what was interesting was whenever I study hip-hop, part of what interests me the most is when it serves as a voice for the voiceless, which usually breaks down along racial lines. It ends up being the voice of the people in a society who are often forgotten. That was not the case with Driss. He was sort of geographically forgotten, but not racially forgotten. Amewu, on the other hand, is a descendant of Ghanaian immigrants from the country of Ghana. So already there's some interesting things there. This is what you can learn by just looking around. I knew, Ghana, former British colony, there were a lot of Ghanaians in the UK. But I didn't know that the second most popular destination for Ghanaians in Europe was Germany. It makes sense. There's the Volta region, which used to be a German colony. I didn't know that. My son knew that. He knows all about that kind of stuff. I was driving home yesterday listening to this album. I was like, hey, is there any relationship between Ghana and Germany? So there is some post-colonial question there. But it's interesting because there's a large population of people from Ghana in Germany. And it's really important for all of us to remember the diversity throughout the entire world. The results of globalism are so omnipresent and so positive as can be seen in this album. Now, part of what I wanted to hear, this is the thing, right? So you have prejudices and you have biases. And so when I hear there's a Ghanaian rapper rapping in German, as a professor, I'm like hoping to hear some Ghanaian rhythms and Ghanaian drums and Ghanaian language and whichever dialect he speaks. That's what I want to hear because that's what I perceive of as being like the interesting intersection between these cultures. But that's actually a limited view. Now apparently there are German rappers from Ghana or from Africa who do that. Maybe I'll get to them eventually. But this is not that. This is an album if you like people who can spit, who can rap and who can rhyme and who have such an amazing mastery of cadence and flow. I'm a little bit of a chauvinist in favor of French rap because the French were among the first to really embrace the idea of rapping not in English. And there is something about the French language which leads itself to rap, to making rap music. And I have to admit, I used to say, it's not like in German, how are you supposed to rhyme in that ridiculously staccato language with all these super long words? Well, I think if you study Amewu, and this is coming from somebody who does not know more German than I just said, 20 Zigaretten. I know all these weird camping plots, all these words that don't mean anything, okay? But you can tell just by listening to the strength that this language can lend to hip-hop. In particular, there's a way where he rhymes and it almost sounds like he says a sentence forwards and then says it backwards. It's hard to really describe because I can't pick up the words. They're just sounds to me. But the rhythms of the German language really do lend themselves to a kind of staccato rhythmic mastery, which this person has. So I think the German language must be less forgiving on bad rappers. Like English and French, you can be kind of a bad rapper and get away with it. I don't think you can. I don't think you can be. Just based on this and that Driss album, really just the strength of the language, you have to be a complete master of the cadences in order to work with these staccato sounds, with these long words, with the strange syntax that usually puts the verb, towards the end of the sentence. There's a lot of things about German that make it seem maybe counterintuitive. So, how am I going to review this album? It's a little too much for me to process the way I wanted to process. I'm having a busy week. I have to submit the schedule for my entire department. I'm also department chair. I don't represent my university, but, this channel is a hobby that I picked up in the lobby, so I don't have all the time I like to dedicate to it. So in order to do a full breakdown of this album, I would want to go through and figure out how to translate or find translations of every single song and what it all means and all together. So instead, what I've done is I'm going to go through each song very quickly, but before then, there's 2 songs which I want you to listen to get an idea of what German rap is, or at least what this German rap is. Because this is very different than Driss that I listened to last year. Last year that was basically like EDM mixed in with hip hop. Very, very different than this. And that's the thing. Now, that's one of the great mistakes that Americans make, or people from dominant cultures make. They hear something made by someone who's not them, and then they just assume that it's all like that. So this is at least the second kind of German rap that I'm experienced with, and so I want to talk to you about 2 songs. The first one, I cannot emphasize how much you need to listen to this song. Wait, am I crooked? One second, I need to fix the camera. I feel like I'm a little crooked. Well, now I'm crooked the other way. It's all in the mind. Okay, so let's go to the song which, okay, when you are confronted with a massive song titles, and they're all in another language, and you don't know what anything means. If you see one word and you know what that word means, you grab onto that. Like that's your buoy in the ocean of foreign language. And that word is Hadouken. I'm in my 40s. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat 2 and Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2, the very famous video game that features the character Ryu, who will throw a fireball, and when he throws it, he will say Hadouken. To the point where amongst my friends, if we say pass me something, we say Hadouken me that, Hadouken me a pillow. Like Hadouken is this very important sound for my generation. I think for many generations, because that sound is continued. It communicates force, it communicates power, it's funny, it's playful, and it's at the center of this song. And if you're like me, you need that. So have a listen. Go up and listen to this song, listen to how it's produced, and then whenever you feel that you're way too lost, that you're treading water in a sea of German language, don't worry. There's going to be a Hadouken that will come and make you feel a little bit safe. What's cool is Amewu, which is, I believe, his actual real name. It is a Ghanaian name, so just by his name, he's indicating his identity, is self-produced. So a couple of these, maybe about a third or quarter of the tracks on this album are self-produced, which is very cool. It's a very tight snare sound, like ping, really pings, kind of floating, echoey synths. But all of this is just an excuse for this rap, for this spitting. And I don't really go for technical rapping that much, but there's something about the language that makes this less aggravating to me than listening to super technical speed rapping in English. So in 10 seconds, he says all of that in 10 seconds. You want something new, but I'm not ready yet anyway. I take my time, even if a little of it remains afterwards. I read a lot, traveled a lot to write to you, but I'm writing for my life until it writes. That's what he was able to say all in 10 seconds, but it never sounds forced. It's just like, what it reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me a little bit of of the baby's verse on Jail. You know how in that verse it kind of speeds up and then slows. I had to think it was Da Baby or Little Baby. You know, he kind of like speeds up and slows down and just kind of has that sort of like complete mastery. It's that kind of feeling. Just very talented, very technical. At the end of this first verse, he like rhymes with the word find, which means enemy, which is where the word fiend comes from in English. It just like rhymes with like if you just listen, and he like takes the word and places it all over different sentences over and over again. There's a find. It really creates. I just keep using the word rhythm, but it creates a very interesting, very punchy, interesting rhythm, which leads great into this hook, this chorus, which has the Hadouken, the actual sound in the back, and that slows things down. Cause I'll rap till I'm dead. Hadouken. I still have plenty of time to write verses. I don't stress because I don't have a boss. Because I'll search long enough. Treasures will be found because I'll rap till I'm dead. Hadouken! And it just comes in, and every time you hear that Hadouken, it's engaging, it's fun, and it gets you kind of psyched up. Another thing that happens when listening to music that is in a language you don't understand at all is when you understand something, you attach a lot of importance and you try to figure out what they're trying to say. So the opening of the second verse is Charlie Hebdo, Boko Haram, Guantanamo. Okay, Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical newspaper that was attacked by super militant Islamists who killed the entire staff for showing it, for drawing Muhammad. Boko Haram, the African super extremist Muslim terrorist group. Guantanamo. Okay, the American dark jail. So already we're like just putting those two things together puts me in a different state because I go okay, obviously he's not talking about who's good and who's bad, but just talking about bad things in general. It continues on, drone alert, boundaries and zones, conquest, struggle, long distance immigration, demonstrations, the slogan is fear, where they come from, the ground is burnt. So really, it seems that it's just, he's not really talking about all these things individually, but talking about the power that his rap has to address these issues, to talk about these issues, and to highlight them in general. And he just goes just so hard. That's just all I can say. He just goes so hard. Sehr gut, really, really nails it. And I'm sorry to be such a snob. And I don't have a position to even say this. Who the hell am I? I'm a professor of French in Western New York. But as far as I'm concerned, this is absolute proof of German as a language for rap music, which it doesn't need. It already has a rap scene. It doesn't need me to say it. But I'm saying it anyways. I think if you're not convinced, just listen to this song all the way through, and I think you'll agree. And then at the end, there's some scratching the other sounds from Street Fighter 2. Oof, ha ha ha, perfect, which are just sounds which are so burned into your brain from having played this game for 10,000 hours that it's nice to hear them. It's fun to hear them scratched up. Hadouken, perfect. It's great. The next song I'm going to focus on a little bit less, but that's going to be the self-titled song, Haben, oder, Sein, to have or to be, which is based on the sociologist book, which is all about the problem that our modern society has with the difference of to have and to be. Are we people who have things, or are we people who are things? The problems with materialism, the problems how materialism spoils our soul. And this is produced by someone named the Ghanaian Stallion, which is kind of a nice name. The kind of echoing sounds over kind of more of a trap beat. A lot of fun with language and rhythm, just to pose these not just existential questions, but questions about the nature of existence, which are not always the same thing. But I'm not going to explain why on this video. I have to fill out an Excel spreadsheet with who's teaching what when. A lot of people care about what they get for what they do. I care about what I do because I define myself by who I am, not what I have, will have, or had. And the eternal question remains, to have or to be. As a professor of French, I appreciate this. As a professor of language, actually, teaching language at the beginning level is good. I enjoy it. I have to do it every semester. I do it all the time. I really enjoy it. But one of my favorite parts is that I get to force these people, my students, to think about the meaning of these verbs. To have, to be, to do. What kind of person are you? How do we conjugate these verbs? What are these verbs? What is existence? I lean so hard into it when I teach. There's actually this movie, Romance, by Catherine Breillat. Very trigger warnings all over the place, all kinds of sexual assault and sexual content. Great movie. But there's a scene where she's an English French teacher, living in France. It's a French movie. And she walks up and down surrounded by her students, and she just basically quotes this song, before it was made. And she starts conjugating to have and to be. One can have and not be, and one can be and not have. It's, to be a little preposterous, but accurate. It's a European question much more than an American question. We've settled this debate in America. To have. What's important? Having a lot of things or being happy? Having things. Working and having and working. That's what matters to us. Unfortunately. I think we'd be a much better society if we worried about being more than having. But what do I know? I'm a French professor in Western New York. So I'm going to go through the rest of the album way too quickly. This album deserves a better review than I am giving it. It deserves more time. I'm probably going to buy this album, even though the shipping from Germany is murderous. I'm going to buy this album and listen to it and live with it, because it's very enjoyable all the way through. But I don't quite have the time to dedicate. Okay, so the first track is called Amewu, which is cool. Sounds almost like a thumb piano being played, like kind of these crow sounds in the background. In general, a lot of the atmosphere is kind of like horror atmosphere. Not horror, mysterious, slightly unsettling. Unheimlich, as the Germans like to say. Uncanny, like sort of a feeling of being a little bit lost. Lots of space in the beat, which is nice because a lot of the beats on this album have a sort of spacey, echoey feel, which is then filled in by this ridiculously fast and technically proficient and enjoyably cadenced rapping. Next song, Alles Opfer, which means all sacrifice, has kind of cool flutes and staggered drums and heavy bass. After that is Lisa's Migraine, kind of a cool sort of shuffling old school beat. At times this album feels very kind of old school, like it could be from the 90s or even the late 80s. But what's great on this one, Lisa's Migraine, is just how well his rapping goes along with the shuffling beat. So for most of the album, the beats are very minimal, and then he creates his own rhythm over them. Whereas this, he's really just following along with the shuffling beat. It just shows what a master of cadence he is. And also, this is where it's a song about a migraine. I wish I had the time to figure out what this is about, because migraines are interesting. Erste Zeilen, first lines, feels kind of like a continuation of the previous song. Some of the songs do feel very connected, it has that same kind of shuffle. Then we have Hadouken, which I already discussed. Then Fliegen, which means to fly. Really old school jazzy beat, another kind of staggered beat, catchy chorus. Then to have or to be. Then Kenne meine Fehler, know my mistakes. What's cool here is he just keeps repeating the same lines over and over again, and it becomes, as I would say, as hypnotic as German hip hop can be, as the German language can be. Really nice. Freier Himmel, clear sky, a little more gentle, warmer sounds here. Whereas the album opens up and we feel very much like we're on a sort of open field in the middle of the Schwarzkopf. I don't know, we're just sort of kind of lost in kind of a desolate place. This feels a lot warmer, almost gentle rapping here. He sounds sort of tired, but then he musters up energy as the song goes along and then gets tired again. Plastikrand, Plastic Beach, he's just spitting and spitting. I assume this is an environmentalist song. I don't know. Schloss, castle, more ethereal. Weird fact. So whenever I see Schloss, I think about the famous castle in World War II, where a lot of the paintings were hidden. I forget the name of it's a very famous fairy storybook castle, and that's where they hid the Ghent altarpiece. And my grandfather was there to help recover it. So it's whenever I see the word Schloss, I think of the castle, and I think of this kind of famous moment in world history that my family was attached to. But great song. Very ethereal, kind of sustained synthesizers, kind of washes over his staccato raps. He just repeats these same lines over and over again. Ich ging bis zu Gott, doch die Tür war so das riesige Schloss an der Tür warst du. Over and over again, but was slightly more convincingly than I just did. I went to God, but the door was closed. The huge lock on the door was from you. As far as I can tell, that's what it means. A lot of cosmic themes on this album, a lot of themes about, sort of, as far as I can tell, bigger themes about existence and the importance of making music and the importance of being a rapper against the void. The last two songs, I just wasn't able to focus on enough. There's a thing that happens when you listen to other languages where you get tired. It's nobody's fault. It just happens. So these last two songs are very connected, a lot more mournful, a lot more introspective. And again, I wish I had more time to give to it, but maybe you do. Maybe you know this album. Maybe you're in Deutschland and you're watching this and you want to tell me what I'm missing. Could you please? Could you tell me in the comments? Sky, cool. That's awesome that you did this, but you missed this and you missed that and you missed that. Okay? And I'll be like, Entschuldigung. Genau. Okay. Well, until next time, where I have to go back and work on those schedules. We don't teach German at my college, by the way. Most schools have stopped teaching German. It's very sad. The state of languages in America is a real problem. And I don't mean at my institution. I mean in the entire country. It is a serious problem. We have a serious monolingual, anti-intercultural competence problem in America. Okay, that's my political note. Can you tell I'm stalling? Because I don't want to go do my work. All right, there's the camera.